I woke up to the sound of laughter, sharp echoing wrong, the kind that doesn't belong inside your dream home. For a split second I thought I was still asleep, but then came the splash, then another, then music. I stumbled out of bed, heart pounding, and pulled open the curtains and froze. 3 women were in my backyard pool, not beside it, in it, floating on swan inflatables, sipping drinks, their Bluetooth speaker blasting pop music loud enough to shake the fence. One of them waved like I was the intruder. My dream home, the one I'd worked 20 years to afford, had turned into a public water park overnight. And in the middle of it all sat one woman in a wide-brimmed hat and oversized sunglasses, the kind of confidence only a lifetime of entitlement could buy. That was the day I met Karen, and she decided my pool was hers. Before we dive deeper, tell me where you're watching from and what time it is, and don't forget to subscribe. You'll want to see how this story ends. I stood there for a good 10 seconds, staring at the absurd scene. My backyard turned into some kind of suburban pool club. The morning sun hit the water just right, glimmering off their sunglasses and plastic cups, and for a surreal moment, I wondered if I was in the wrong house. Maybe I'd broken into someone else's dream. But then I glanced at the deed framed on the kitchen counter. Nope, this was mine. Every square foot of it. I stepped outside, trying to sound calm, but all 3 heads turned toward me. The one in the big sun hat, the ringleader, slowly raised her sunglasses, peering over the rim like a queen inspecting her servant. "Your pool," she said with a laugh that felt like nails on glass. "Sweetheart, this is the community pool. You must be nay." "Community pool?" I blinked. "No, it's not. I bought this property 2 months ago. This pool sits on my land. I paid for it. You're trespassing." The other 2 women glanced at each other awkwardly, but the sun hat lady just smirked. She had that tone, that HOA authority voice that can turn even the calmest neighbor into a villain. "I wasn't notified about any sale," she said, lounging back in the water like she was reclining on a throne. "And I have a key. So unless you're squatting here, I'd suggest you call." Her arrogance hit me like chlorine in the eyes. "Your key? That's impossible. The locks were changed." She shrugged, unfazed. "Oh, you must be talking about that gate." The side one. I had no idea what Section 9 meant, but I did know one thing: she was lying. I'd read every page of the homeowner's deed before signing it. The pool, the deck, the surrounding patio, all part of the private lot. Still, the way she said it made me second-guess myself. Her confidence was unsettling, like she'd been doing this for years and getting away with it every time. "Ma'am," I said, trying to stay polite, "you need to leave. Right now." Her smile widened. She stood up slowly, water dripping from her arms sliding down the hem of her floral swimsuit cover-up. She walked toward me, wet footprints marking the deck, stopping just close enough for me to catch the scent of expensive sunscreen. "Tell you what," she said softly, tilting her head. "Why don't you call the HOA president, ask him. His name's Paul. Tell him Karen said hi." That name, Karen, it fit her too perfectly. I didn't even need to hear the rest. She gave me one last condescending smile, flicked her wet hair over her shoulder, and whispered, "We'll see who really owns this pool." Then she turned, gestured for her friends, and they all climbed out as if they were doing me a favor. As they left through the side gate, I noticed something strange. She didn't struggle with the latch. The gate opened smoothly, no resistance. She had a key. I locked the gate behind them, checked it twice, and stood by the pool in silence. The water rippled lazily, reflecting the morning sun mocking me. It should have been peaceful. Instead, I felt invaded, exposed. My perfect home had been tainted by something worse than vandals' entitlement. That evening I met Paul, the HOA president, at his office near the clubhouse. He was friendly enough at first, polished, rehearsed, smile, the kind of man who says, "neighbor" too often. I told him what happened, showed him a screenshot of Karen and her friends in the pool. He looked at the photo, then at me, then laughed nervously. "Oh, Karen, yeah, she's spirited. Look, I'm sure it was just a misunderstanding. You know how these things go. We all share amenities here." I frowned. "This isn't an amenity. It's part of my property line." He sighed, pretending to read something on his laptop. "Right. But she's been a resident here for over 15 years. We can't just assume malicious intent. Maybe you could extend a little goodwill." "Goodwill," I repeated, incredulous. "She broke into my pool. Let's not use words like broke in." He leaned forward, lowering his voice like we were co-conspirators. "She's a respected member of the HOA board. Making enemies this early won't do you any favors." I stared at him. "Are you saying I should let people trespass on my land because it's inconvenient to upset her?" He smiled thinly. "I'm saying, pick your battles." That phrase stuck with me the whole drive home. Pick your battles. It sounded wise until you realized it always benefits the aggressor. When I got back, the gate was locked, or so I thought. Out of habit, I tested it. Click. It opened again. The latch had been filed down, not broken, not forced, altered. Someone had deliberately shaved the metal so it wouldn't close properly. That's when the reality sank in. Karen wasn't bluffing. She wasn't waiting for permission. She was claiming territory. I tightened the lock with a new padlock, double-checked every latch, and ordered 4 outdoor cameras that night. I spent the next weekend installing them, 1 by the pool, 1 near the gate, 2 along the fence line. Each had motion detection and remote access. For a few days, nothing happened. The footage was empty except for squirrels, birds, and the occasional leaf blowing by. I almost convinced myself it was over. Then on Tuesday, around noon, while I was at work, I got a motion alert. I opened the camera feed, and there she was, Karen, alone. Reclining on my pool chair, sun hat tilted perfectly, holding a cold drink like she was posing for a magazine. She didn't even swim. She just sat there for 2 hours, scrolling her phone occasionally, taking selfies. The next day, same thing. Then Thursday, she brought 2 friends again. They swam, they ate sandwiches, they left before I got home. By Friday, it wasn't just disrespect, it was performance. Like she knew I was watching. That weekend, I marched back to the HOA office. Paul wasn't there, but his assistant told me, "Oh, Karen's using the pool again. She mentioned something about community access. Didn't you two settle that?" Settle that? My hands shook as I pulled out my phone. I showed her the video feed, Karen splashing, laughing, raising her drink to the camera like she was toasting me. The assistant's smile faltered. "Oh, wow. Okay, I'll make a note for the next board meeting." "Don't bother," I said coldly. "I'll handle it myself." That night, I sat at my kitchen table surrounded by paperwork, the deed, the plat map, the HOA guidelines. Every line proved the same thing: the pool was mine. But proof didn't matter to people like Karen. They didn't believe in rules, only reactions. I poured myself a drink, stared out at the still water reflecting the moonlight, and whispered to no one, "You picked the wrong pool, Karen." Because in that moment, something inside me clicked. Not anger, resolve. I wasn't going to beg the HOA call the cops or argue with her anymore. I was going to plan. And if there's one thing I'd learned from years of managing stubborn people, it's that the best revenge doesn't shout. It waits. The next morning, I opened my phone, scrolled through my contacts, and stopped at a name I hadn't dialed in years: Dr. Mason, chemistry department. A slow smile spread across my face. If Karen wanted to keep swimming in my pool, I'd make sure she'd never forget it. The first thing I did that weekend was turn my backyard into Fort Knox. I installed a new locking mechanism on the gate, industrial-grade stainless steel, the kind you'd need a saw to break through. I even added a bright yellow sign that screamed "Private Property," "No Trespassing" in bold black letters. It looked more like a construction site than a home pool, but I didn't care. I wasn't going to let some over-tanned HOA dictator turn my life into a neighborhood circus. For the first few days, peace returned. The water was still, my coffee tasted better, and I actually started sleeping again. I checked my cameras obsessively, but nothing, no motion alerts, no strange noises, just quiet mornings and the gentle hum of sprinklers. Then Wednesday arrived. I was at work finishing up a late meeting when my phone buzzed motion detected backyard camera. I froze. My heart sank before I even opened the app. And sure enough, there she was, Karen strutting through my gate like she owned the place. The new lock was hanging open. She didn't break it. She unlocked it. Somehow she had another key. Karen laid her towel across my lounge chair, adjusted her sun hat, and lay back with a smug expression. She stayed for nearly an hour occasionally, scrolling her phone occasionally, looking straight into the camera and waving. It wasn't defiance anymore. It was domination. That night, I replayed the footage over and over. Every frame of her soaking in my sunlight made my skin crawl. I checked the timestamps, the angles, even the reflections in the pool glass. She knew exactly where my cameras were. By Friday, she wasn't alone anymore. She brought 2 friends, one blonde, one brunette. They came armed with snacks, matching towels, and a pink inflatable flamingo. They laughed, toasted each other with cans of seltzer, and dove in like it was their resort. The gall of it made my jaw tighten. On Sunday, I caught something new, a maintenance guy walking in through the side gate. He carried a pool net, started skimming the surface, and waved toward the camera as if this was all routine. I stepped outside immediately. "Hey," I called out. "What are you doing here?" He blinked, startled. Miss Karen said she's the owner. Asked me to clean weekly." I nearly laughed. "You're fired." And tell Miss Karen if she steps on my property again, she'll need more than a net. The poor kid just nodded and hurried off. That was the breaking point. I gathered every piece of evidence, screenshots, video files, timestamps, and marched to the HOA office first thing Monday. Paul the president greeted me with that same syrupy smile. "Ah, good morning, neighbor. Everything all right, no, Paul?" "It's not all right," I said, slapping a USB stick on his desk. "Karen's been trespassing all week. She's bringing guests. She even hired a pool cleaner to service my private property." He sighed, rubbing his temples. "I understand you're frustrated, but don't," I interrupted. "Don't give me another HOA speech about harmony and goodwill. Watch the footage." He reluctantly plugged in the drive and clicked play. Karen's smug face filled the monitor, lounging by the pool, waving at the camera. Paul leaned back. "Okay, that doesn't look great." "Doesn't look great," I said, incredulous. "It's illegal. She's trespassing. That's a criminal act." He hesitated, shifting in his chair. "Look, between you and me, Karen's influential. She's on the budget committee. If I take disciplinary action, she could call for a recall vote. I can't afford another HOA war right now." There it was, the truth, plain and rotten. The system wasn't built for justice, it was built for convenience. "So you're not going to do anything," I said flatly. "I'll send her a warning letter," he said quickly, eyes darting away. "That's the best I can do without a board meeting." I laughed. "Right, a letter. I'm sure that'll terrify her." He tried to soften his tone. "You have to understand, Karen's been here for 15 years. You're new. These things take time to settle." I leaned forward. "Time. She's been swimming in my pool." "How much more time do you need before it becomes a community park?" He said nothing, just tapped his pen nervously. When I left the office, I realized something profound. Nobody was coming to help me. Not the HOA, not the neighbors, not the police, who'd probably laugh it off as a civil matter. That evening, I watched the sunset from my deck. It should have been peaceful, but all I could feel was anger simmering under my skin. My property, my sanctuary, had become a joke. Later that night, I reviewed old camera footage, hoping for clues, and I found one. 2 weeks earlier, the footage showed Karen slipping through the gate with a set of keys in hand. I zoomed in, silver keychain, bright pink tag with her initials KP. She didn't just have a spare key, she had the original. The previous homeowner must have given her one for access years ago, back when she was managing the community pool maintenance. That explained everything. The audacity, the confidence. She wasn't guessing, she was reclaiming what she thought was still hers. At midnight, I called my locksmith, an old friend named Ray. He owed me a favor from a project years ago. "Ray, I need new locks. All of them. Tomorrow." He whistled. "All right, tough guy. What's going on? You running from the mob?" "Worse," I said. "An HOA Karen." He laughed. "Say no more. I'll be there at 9. By noon the next day, every lock was changed. Gate, side, door shed, even the mailbox. I handed Ray a coffee and told him to keep the spares off record. He winked. "Don't worry, man. She's not getting through these." But Karen was nothing if not persistent. By Thursday, I got another motion alert. My stomach dropped. I opened the live feed, and there she was again. Standing outside the locked gate, holding a tote bag and a look of pure indignation. She shook the latch violently, muttering something I couldn't hear. Then she leaned closer to the camera and said, clear as day, "You can't lock me out forever." The nerve of this woman was beyond human comprehension. That night I sat in the dark watching that clip on repeat. Her words echoed in my head over and over. "You can't lock me out forever." It wasn't just a threat. It was a promise. I started noticing things. My mailbox left open, footprints near the gate, a towel draped over the fence one morning. She was still getting in somehow, maybe jumping the fence, maybe through a weak spot in the corner I hadn't reinforced. It was psychological warfare now. Every creak of wood, every motion alert made my pulse spike. She wanted to wear me down, make me snap first. But that's the thing about people like Karen, they mistake patience for weakness. On Sunday, I hosted a small barbecue with a couple of coworkers. They'd heard the story and thought I was exaggerating. Until halfway through lunch, one of them pointed at the camera feed on my phone. Dude, is that her?" Sure enough, there she was again, walking through my yard, like she was on her way to her personal spa. I slammed my drink down and marched outside. "Karen," I yelled. She turned unbothered. "Oh, hi," she said cheerfully. "Just checking the water levels." "HOA business. Get out." Her smile froze. "Excuse me, you heard me. This isn't HOA property. It's mine. You step foot here again and I'll file trespassing charges." She laughed. Oh, please. You think anyone's going to believe you over me? This neighborhood runs on my word. Then maybe it's time someone changes that, I said. Her eyes narrowed. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. You'll regret this. You don't understand how things work here. I understand perfectly, I said. And I'm done playing nice. She smirked. We'll see. Then she turned and left, dripping arrogance with every step. I watched her walk away, fists clenched. For the first time, I realized this wasn't just about a pool anymore. It was about control. She wanted to own me, my peace, my patience, my dignity. That's when I decided. No more cameras, no more signs, no more warnings. If Karen wanted to keep playing games, fine. I'd play too, but I'd play smarter. Because from that night on, I wasn't defending my property anymore. I was preparing for war. By the time Monday rolled around, the rage had cooled into something colder and more methodical, a plan. Angry shouting felt primitive. Paperwork had failed me. The HOA had failed me. Public shaming hadn't even begun. What I needed was a move that would do three things at once: expose Karen, protect my property, and make sure the whole neighborhood saw who had been lying all along. I scrolled through my phone until I found an old contact I hadn't dialed in years. Mason Alder, PhD, chemistry professor, grad school roommate, the kind of guy who could make a bad idea look like a brilliant thought experiment. We drank cheap beer at midnight and wrote equations on napkins back in the day. If anyone could help me design something safe but memorable, Mason was the one. Hey Mason, I said when he answered. You remember your old stubborn friend from the dorm? There was a long amused pause. How could I forget? What have you gotten yourself into this time? I told him the story fast and clipped the purchase the first night. The sun hat, the key, the HOA president with his rehearsed smile, the footage of her lounging like she'd moved in. When I got to the part about her brand of sunscreen, the stuff she rubbed on like it was perfume, Mason chimed in. High SPF, titanium dioxide. That's her thing, right? He sounded both interested and cautious. Listen, I don't mix anything for stunts anymore, but I have access to harmless reagents and commercially approved colorants. If your goal is humiliation and documentary proof, not harm, there are ways to make a visible reaction that's temporary and skin-safe. Think theatrical dye more than chemistry experiment. Don't do anything that could be toxic or dangerous. Relief flooded me. I didn't want to hurt anyone. I wanted a spectacle, a theatrical unmasking, legal non-toxic reversible, I repeated. Something that reacts specifically with her sunscreen type, just a color change. Loud, undeniable, and unmagical. I realized how ridiculous I sounded even as I said it. Mason didn't laugh. He was already thinking in constraints and contingencies. What I can do, he said slowly, is formulate a water-safe tint that activates in the presence of that sunscreen's particular ingredients under strong sunlight. It's more of a color trigger than a chemical reaction. Like those pH strips you used to use in high school biology, safe, temporary, dramatic. But you have to promise me two things. You'll let me test it thoroughly, and you'll not let anyone with sensitive skin be exposed without consent. No surprises beyond color. No skin irritation. No long-term staining. I promised. I promised things I hadn't even known I'd be comfortable, promising no permanent harm, no medical risk, and no escalation beyond humiliation and exposure. Mason arrived 3 days later, carrying a small case that looked like a travel kit for a very precise barber. He'd brought samples, safety data sheets, and a patient mildly exasperated expression that said, "This is why we became scientists and not vigilantes." We set up in my garage because it was neutral territory, not a lab, not a crime scene. He talked me through options without ever giving me a recipe. What you want is selectivity, he explained, tapping a glossy sachet. Many luxury sunscreens use higher concentrations of physical blockers and certain stabilizers. We can use a harmless dye that binds temporarily to those stabilizers under UV exposure. The dye itself is used in pool testing, cosmetic demos, and theatrical makeup. It's formulated to rinse off with soap and won't penetrate the skin beyond surface staining. It fades in a day or two. That's important, humiliation, not injury. He placed a few drops into a clear beaker of pool water and added a dab of the same sunscreen. Karen always used the brand I'd painstakingly identified from the footage where she slathered on before diving. At first, nothing. Then, within minutes, the water shifted from perfect blue to a startling jewel-toned green. It was mesmerizing, like someone had flipped a switch in the color palette of reality. On a white cloth, introduced to the mixture, a temporary green tint bloomed vivid but shallow, exactly the theatrical